glad you all at least found the place. We had to shut down, we had to move because the air conditioner won't run down at City Hall, and it was gonna be rather hot. So with that, let's stand and do the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, Pastor Lynn Lamberty will lead us in a prayer.
Well, greetings to all of you on this hot day. May we pray. Dear God, we ask your blessings on this council, on the people who've been called to lead the community in which we live, which we work, which we pray. And help them as leaders to be willing to ask the important questions at all of the right times. How do we fix this? What do we need to learn? How might we need to change? To whom do we need to listen? And help us all to remember that all of us together are called to be servants, and it's our responsibility to serve the common good of everyone. And help us all to remember that no matter where we live, everyone is our neighbor. And that throughout the ages, prophets have called the leaders of the people and the people themselves to respect and protect the most vulnerable among us, our children, the elderly, the poor, those who are hungry, those who have no homes, those who are ill in body, mind, or spirit, the strangers and immigrants in our midst, those who live on the margins, those who are alone, those who are forgotten. Grant us all the wisdom and courage to know and do what is right and good and true. May we speak out when it's time to speak out, and listen patiently and receptively when it's time to listen. And may we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and by the spirit of love. All this we pray, O God, in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Now, we don't have microphones in front of us tonight. So I'm going to remind all of us that we need to speak up so that we can hear each other and people can hear us. Back in the back, we're being recorded, hopefully, so that Erica will have notes or be able to refer to that recording for notes. Other than that, there's no visuals tonight, nothing going out streaming. And when we get down to the possible animal ordinance, there's some of you that may want to speak about that, and we'll have a 5-minute time limit. And I'll ask that you come forward, be recognized, come forward, and state your name and your address, and then a short, brief reason of why you're here. And with that, let's go over our minutes from the last meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 7, 2023 City Council meeting.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve those minutes. Any questions about them? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's move down to our appropriation ordinance number 8A, dated August 16th.
I just got a couple of questions. Toward the bottom of the first page, the Comancho's Handyman Service, what is PJ's Library?
Capital projects, library has an annual allocation that you provide to them as capital
Right.
project. And what we just looked at before the meeting, they're working on, I believe, maybe we're working on some sort of ramp up there at the library.
I didn't quite understand the PJ's.
Project.
Oh, projects.
Capital project. projects.
Oh, capital projects,
Short
okay.
abbreviation.
We only have so much room, so.
Okay. The only other thing, Erica, on the 3 items here that are involving credit cards, I know you no longer furnish the detail
Right.
about the cards. Are you checking to make sure that
Yes,
sales
we
tax?
look through them.
I haven't heard any comment in a long time about sales tax.
If you look, there's a few of them, I think that have notes next to them. We watch them to make sure. I don't know if there was any notes on this one. So there's a copy in the back of what you received. It shows a purchase that was made to eBay. And what happened there is with the purchase to eBay, they purchased multiple items at the same time. One was for the electric department and one was for parks. The electric department portion is subject to sales tax, and eBay, in order to get it to be exempt, it takes a lot. And so that one purchase did have sales tax on it, and that's why anytime there's sales tax, I will provide you with a copy with an explanation to show what happened there.
Okay, so we can assume that all of them are gonna be exempt, except those that you make note that they're subject to.
Either they were exempt or they had sales tax.
Okay.
If they had sales tax and it was legitimate sales tax, I don't note that. The only time I note it is if there was sales tax and it should not have been.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Make a motion to approve appropriation ordinance number 8A dated August 16, 2023.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve this appropriation ordinance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And at this time, that moves us to our visitor section, and Jayme Chapin from Augusta is here to present and recognize winners of the Adopt-A-Pop contest.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Thank you for letting me come this evening and being in air conditioning. It's very important. We just finished up with the Adopt-A-Pop judging. Connie never tells me who the judges are, so I always know it's a very hard thing to do. But this year, our winners unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. The first place was Shannon Edmond from the Insurance Guys, which is located right in front of your building. Second place was Linda Case, which was, I found out was just the name it was registered under, but it's for the Garden Gate Garden Club group. And theirs is located in front of the old Gazette building that's right on State Street. And in the third place, again, was Lily Lake 4-H. They always do a wonderful job. So we were trying to get some of the girls here this evening, but they weren't able to come with school just starting and so forth. I just want to say that thank you for helping to make this possible and award money. I think it just keeps getting better every year, and it looks phenomenal downtown. We've had some issues with drought and too much rain and too much heat, but overall they still look amazing. We're going to leave them there as long as we can. So thank you for helping with that.
Thank you, Jayme. Okay, this time I'll call for other visitors that might be here for something that's not already on our agenda. Okay, we'll go down to our first item of business, cereal malt beverage license application. Staff?
Yes, Mayor, Council, turn the staff report over to Erica Jones.
Mayor and Council, this is pretty routine. The only difference is that I'm actually asking for two licenses for this premise. Part of the issue is with Miller's 5. They both serve people to go and people that do stay. And I had a call of the Kansas Alcoholic Beverage Control to see the best way to handle that, because generally if it's on premise, they have to open it in the business and hand it to somebody. And there was concern about what if we do that and somebody drinks off, which they're not liable for. That's an individual's decision to do that. But they were concerned that that could be an issue. Not everybody would want to stay, and then they couldn't serve people who were leaving. So if they just did off premise, that pretty much covered them, because people could still drink it out in the parking lot or at a picnic table or take it home. The problem is, you know, in the near future, you guys are gonna be considering the common consumption ordinance. In order to participate in that, they have to have on premise. So the decision, I talked it through with them, and the decision was made just to go ahead and get both of them. That's what the state recommended, and this way she doesn't have to come back and ask for an additional one later. So that, they paid the fee, and they passed the background check, everything went through, so staff would recommend approval. So I'll turn it over to you guys for any questions.
Chief, I have a question for you of this, the on premises, and I know in their application, they draw their property line, but they do have picnic benches at their on city properties, that can be an enforcement problem. So
I
you-
might be able to answer that.
Okay, go ahead.
I actually told her they're not allowed to in that right of way. They can't be on the sidewalks or the right of way.
Okay.
So she's gonna have to move that, because that's considered city right of way. Cause people can't be on the sidewalk downtown either. So that's something we talked through. If you look, I actually put the box on the outside because she only did the building. And there was a question when I pulled up the county, I looked at where their line was, and it's to the edge of the sidewalk.
Right.
And then back to the back where the grassy area is, so she will not be able to have those picnics there. Picnic tables are on the grass and people drink there.
Well, back to my question to the chief, it'd be something that you guys would enforce, you know, if you're driving by there and you see people sitting on the city sidewalk on their benches drinking, it'd be illegal, right?
Correct, at this time, until you get the other ordinance they're considering later in effect, it would
Common
be illegal till then.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Oh, I do appreciate getting to see this complete form. I don't know, we hardly ever see those. That's kind of nice to see for a change.
Well, like last year we did, I almost didn't include it because there's some information in there that I don't know that they want included, but I looked at last year and the year prior and we've included that whole application. It was public records, so.
Now, isn't the common consumption only for a few days out of the week?
Thursday, Friday, Saturday is what.
And
FEMA
this
does.
license will be for every day of the
So
week?
they can do it every day of the week, or on premise or off premise, but they would only be able to allow it on the sidewalk or the common area on those 3 days. So like, all the other businesses downtown that are licensed, it's the
So
same
the,
thing, they can
on the
serve
premises is only gonna be like parking lot?
their parking lot, and they have some picnic tables in the back, it's on private property, I wrote grassy area, there's a little grassy square that has picnic tables there, and so, they could drink there. Right there, yeah, it's kind of under some shade. So yeah, they could hang out in the parking lot or in the grassy area.
Sound like fun?
It was very different, it took some phone calls because it's different than any of our other businesses that serve alcohol, and trying to make sure they have the right license so that they didn't get themselves in trouble and it didn't become an enforcement issue for public safety. Took a little bit of research, so.
Erica, do we need to make this one or two motions?
I think you're on board with it. I think usually you, for the one at the first of the year, or for the year, you make one motion for all of them, so I think this would have to suffice here as well.
Well, I make a motion of approval of the cereal malt beverage license to sell cereal malt beverage for on premises and also for off premises for Miller 5 Drive-In located at 330 State Street.
Second.
I got a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
We got a terminology question. I can't keep up with the state changes that they've done on liquor licensing, but used to be cereal malt beverages was alcohol less than a certain percent. Is that still true?
It is, so it's still cereal malt beverage, they changed it to call it enhanced cereal malt beverage, but now the enhanced is just cereal malt beverage, it's 6% or less. So it used to only be 3%, and they upped it to the 6%, so if you have a cereal malt beverage license, you can serve anything with 6% or less, so that does include some of the wine coolers and things that were 4 or 5% before, some of them are more than that, but.
So even though we approve this, it still has to go to the state
Yes,
for final approval?
No, this is local, and it's the 6% is what is included in this.
So they don't have to have a state.
No, CMB is only governed locally, so it's, the only thing that the state does with alcoholic liquor, so anything above 6%, the state has to sign off on. I do have to send all copies of these things to the state, and they actually have a state seal on them and stamp. But this is your decision to make whether or not to issue these. At the state level with alcoholic liquor, you don't get the say in that.
So even though this says cereal malt beverage, it can be any alcoholic beverage, 6% or less?
I think cereal malt beverage and enhanced cereal malt beverage, those are interchangeable now, but what it all means now is anything, cereal malt beverage is now 6% alcohol or less.
Is this one
enhanced one or not?
It's the same thing now, when it first came about, they referred to it as the enhanced, because they enhanced it to include up to 6% now.
The title of the license just says cereal malt beverage, and that's why I was asking.
Yeah, and that includes anything up to 6%.
Erica, didn't we quite some time back here when the state made that change, we passed something recognizing it at our city level, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean, we changed it to that, I don't know if we
Right.
have that enhanced language in there or not.
I
But
thought
it's
it
the same
was.
thing, the state considers it the same thing.
That includes wines too.
Yeah, wine up to 6%, so yeah, now that it's enhanced, it's any beverage with
Any beer,
6%.
not just cereal malt.
So what will the off-premise allow them to do?
That means you could go get your cheeseburger and a can of beer or a bottle of beer and take it home with you.
Open.
No, no. So, I mean, I guess if you open it, that's on you and that's your decision, if you want the chief to find you.
So when they hand you a beer out the window, it's gonna be
Right,
closed?
so what they'll do, because they have both, she's probably gonna ask the person, are you taking this to go, or is it for here? And if it's for there, she will likely open it, or they'll just give it to everyone closed and let them choose whether or not they open it and drink it there or take it with them. That's why they have the two different licenses.
So we'll have to make a decision when they have, if we do this,
The common
common
consumption,
consumption, yeah.
that they still owe 90% of their business is to go. So if it was only on premise or the common consumption is only the 3 days. And then everything else would have to be drank there on their property, and with 90% of their business being people who take their stuff home, they lose out on any kind of sales for that. So that way, they would probably continue to maintain both licenses, just so that they can offer people to come.
It's no different than what they're doing at Spangles in Andover.
Well, and that's a little different, cause that's what I thought too, was the same kind of thing, but that's called liquor it's liquor to go, and you actually have to put it in a sealed bag and go through all this kind of stuff. What this is basically a Casey's, you could walk in and buy a single beer can in Casey's and walk out and drink it in the parking lot, drink it in your car, or drink it at home. Not recommending any of the above. But it's a personal choice, so when they buy it at Miller's 5, they can choose to take it home and drink it, or drink it there. But this way, Miller's 5 is covered legally with what they're
And
doing.
Casey's is not consumption on premises.
There's an off premise, but technically, people could drink it in the parking lot, because they only license their building, so their parking lot is considered off premise. They don't have any control of when it's consumed, they just have it that you can't consume it inside the building, so. Like I said, this was weird and it took several phone calls.
You've got all this now, chief, you understand all this?
Yep.
So will the owners be checking licenses for age?
Yeah, all those laws still apply, they're just as liable to make sure, no one underage can be serving, who they're serving. If you have certain convictions, you can't be serving, they're completely covered by the state, same liquor laws and alcohol laws that the state of Kansas and the city enforces.
Any
Well,
other
you done that
questions?
almost as good as Andrew.
Yeah, I'm good with this a lot, but this was definitely different.
Real different. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Ordinance number 2225 regarding animal control and regulation. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, so I don't wanna set the stage for this one because it is really complex and complicated how you're getting to this point, but you are actually at kind of a trigger point, with the planning commission where you have a meeting scheduled coming up to consider, their action at the last step. So you're actually in a protest period right now. And what I wanted to draw to your attention are the different avenues that you can take, because at the last meeting, I was asked, why isn't this moving faster? And it's not moving faster because part of it is tied into zoning law changes. Other parts of it are completely unrelated to the zoning laws, and you can act on them whenever you want to, and have had that ability for the past 4 or 5 months. And so you're in a position where you can choose to do that. You're in a position where you can let the planning commission's recommendation play out and have your meeting on the 5th and discuss the part that was specifically in the zoning requirements, which has to do with chickens and more specifically coops, which are considered accessory structure like a shed is. So what I want to show you real quick, just explain to everybody where we're at up here on the screen. Council, this is what I sent out to you. So there's a couple things going on that hit zoning, and I will back up to that here in a minute, but I just want to show you the process. So we went through the public hearing process. Council essentially started as the applicant. What you asked for was a text amendment change. And the things that you were amending in the text, there's two different things going on. One is chicken coops as an accessory structure like a shed. Sheds are handled through a zoning process as well. The second thing is you have a use called non-commercial farm animal keeping, which, unless you're going to make a choice to define a chicken as a pet, the way that we interpret that under the code is more so treated as a farm animal. And that is only allowed in 2 of the zoning districts, agricultural and rural residential, which aren't even in town. Those things are outside of the city limits. So you had to have something change, if we're understanding the interpretation of a chicken being a farm animal correctly, to allow that to occur in residential areas. And then the second thing, if you're going to have setbacks, distance requirements away from other buildings, things like that, that's generally managed through the accessory structure and the zoning process as well. That's why the chicken coop stuff went through zoning. The changes regarding TNR, the changes regarding dogs and cats, all of that stuff is not necessarily zoning related. So, but the whole ordinance has been held up because we're waiting to bring it all to. So what happened at the last, or at the most recent planning commission meeting is they had proposals regarding the text amendment changes to allow for the chickens and to set up different parameters for zoning, for chicken coops to be allowed. And they raised a number of questions and didn't feel like the ordinance, or the zoning regulation changes actually addressed those concerns. And so they expressed discomfort with moving forward the way it was drafted and unanimously voted it down at the public hearing. They did have a couple people speak. It wasn't a big audience. It doesn't mean there's not more interest in that in the community. It just wasn't a big audience at the hearing. But there's an individual who spoke against it. There's an individual who spoke in favor of it. But where that leaves you is what you can see up here on the screen, is if planning commission had approved it as drafted, you would still be in the protest period for the 14 days, and then it comes to you for consideration of approval. But instead, the planning commission denied it, and so it brings you down to this action right here. You as applicant have the option, if you want to withdraw the request. You also have the option to let the process play out, get to your meeting on the 5th. You can vote to overturn the planning commission as well, or there's several other avenues that you can do. I think there's a weakness to that in not having some kind of alignment between council and planning commission to vote supermajority to overturn something that voted unanimously goes. So I wanted to bring this up for discussion. If you wanted to consider withdrawing that application tonight, then the process ends and staff can start working on revised ordinances to try to address some of those concerns that the planning commission raised, and then start the process a few weeks quicker, because you're gonna have to go back through it again. So because of the concerns that were asked about at the last meeting about things moving too slow, wanted to show you where you're at and ask if you wanted to consider going that route, have staff start making those revisions, or let it play out and then eventually get there maybe 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks down the road, and then start that process again. So I'm not gonna ask you to vote on what the planning commission voted on, because you're in the protest period. That's the appropriate time, or the appropriate meeting is the September 5th meeting. But just to tell you some of the things that they were talking about is the ordinance or the zoning regulations were crafted in such a way to try to be as flexible as possible, where staff wouldn't have to do a ton of implementation or a ton of oversight of it in terms of the permitting or otherwise. So it was a lot looser than I think the planning commission wanted to see. So some of their concerns were that the ordinance didn't have specific language explaining what the coops had to be built of, the design or the materials. It had a general description based on a model ordinance that we found, but there was concerns that that wasn't spelled out enough. And so What if someone just put a van out there, threw chickens in it and called it a chicken coop? That's kind of how that conversation played out. I don't know necessarily if those rules would allow that, but the concern was that the language was general enough that it doesn't not allow it. And so that was one of the statements, is that maybe we should make that language more explicit. If you're going to go that route though, then you have to have someone kind of monitoring and inspecting and verifying materials. That's where the inspection really steps up, the demand on staff and everything steps up, and just the amount of regulatory oversight over it steps up a lot. So we tried to start in a place where it wasn't regulated heavily in that way, but the concern was that that's leaving too much open. That was the first item that came up. The second item has to do with the definition of non-commercial farm animals. So I think Planning Commission was concerned about this in the respect that if we don't do a better definition of non-commercial farm animals and we have a zoning use change that allows that, our intent was just for chickens, but if we don't specifically spell out other animals, does that change in the zoning allow all these other animals to exist in this use? I think when you look at other disjointed parts of the code and ordinance, I don't think that that's actually a concern, but during the discussion in the moment, that was one of the concerns that got expressed. And I will show you quickly what that looks like up here on the screen as well. One second. All right, so if you can see up here on the screen, I will zoom in. So when you're looking at zoning districts, we actually have two different things going on. You have what's called a primary use, that's the primary use of the property, but then you're allowed to have secondary uses as well. The sheds, other sort of structures that are considered accessory structures, those are handled under this secondary use table. And when our staff reviewed the code, what we saw in here that we thought was problematic, again, depending on how you define a chicken, was that you actually have a secondary use called non-commercial farm animal keeping. And so our understanding of a chicken is that it's considered a farm animal. It's not a dog or a cat, so we don't refer to that as a pet unless you want to define a chicken as a pet. So the non-commercial farm animal keeping, as you can see in the table, if it has an A next to it, that means it is allowed in that district. So next to non-commercial farm animal keeping, it's only allowed in it's only allowed in 2 of the districts right now, which would be A1, that's agricultural, and rural residential, again, which I don't think we have in our city limits. So if we're categorizing the chicken correctly, and we don't change this, you don't actually allow them in any of the districts. So our first thought was you have to allow them in the district, and then you have to do something to manage the structure if you're going to consider the structure accessory. And when we looked at that, accessory structures would include items like sheds, carports, those sort of things. When you Google what a chicken coop looks like, again, there's a million different ways you can do chicken coop, but just looking at the pictures, it's hard to say that at least to me interpreting it, that it's not just a shed for a chicken to sit in. I mean, you can do a cage with a cover, but the way the definition was, it seems to be more of a permanent structure, and so when you look at that, that would seem to fall under an accessory use, and that's why we thought that issue had to be addressed in planning as well. And during our work sessions, council had talked about distance separation. That's a pretty common thing when you look at chicken ordinances in other cities, so put it a certain distance away from the nearby home. So normally setbacks and things like that are managed through your zoning as well. So I'm just trying to speak to why did we have anything in the planning and zoning realm rather than just treat it as an ordinance. So you can make certain determinations and interpret those things differently. That's the interpretations that staff made and why we thought we had to address those. So you're at a point now where the planning commission's recommendation will be coming to you on the 5th, but their recommendation was not to approve the chicken coops for those reasons. A couple of other reasons where there was a question raised, and again, I think this one is easy to answer, but we have a limit on number of dogs and cats. We have the limit on chickens. There was a question of, okay, are those on top of each other, so you could have up to 4 dogs and cats, and then 4 chickens as well? Are they coincident in the sense you can only have 4? To me, my interpretation is you can have 4 and 4. You could have 8 total. Because the dogs and cats limitations in our codes are specific to dogs and cats.
Is that what zoning was considering? Is that what zoning was talking about?
That was one of the questions that planning commission raised at the hearing that they were asking about, because the zoning text, I think, had limitations, or some of the ordinance that had limitations on the number of chickens. But the question that came up was, how does that interrelate to the dogs and cats stuff? I don't know if that's specifically a zoning question per se, because the dogs and cats isn't, that's just another number elsewhere in your ordinance, but it was one of the questions.
So you can't have 4 dogs and 4 cats. You can have 3 dogs and
You
1
can have
cat.
a total under a current ordinance.
Well, current was
So,
3.
3, okay.
Yeah, but it's changed.
So the question was raised is, okay, if you have 4 chickens, is that on top, so 7 total animals? And again, I see those as completely unrelated in the grand scheme of things. You're not treating the chickens as pets unless you choose to define them. And then there was a question on the permitting. So if you look at chicken coops as being similar to sheds, the way that we treat sheds is if they are below a certain square footage, we don't actually permit them. And so there was a concern that, okay, if you're gonna put them into the zoning realm, but then not do any additional steps to permit them, there's concerns of whether you have oversight on it at all. And so they asked, should we have a more thorough permitting process that requires an inspection? So those were the bullet points that we wrote down from that public hearing. That was the basis of the planning commission's discussion and their recommendation not to move forward with the text amendment on the coops. But that will not be presented to you until the September 5th meeting. So I reached out to the mayor, I kind of explained the situation that was going on. I said, hey, at the last meeting, council was asking about why haven't we moved on the other elements. So I said that there's nothing that precludes you from moving forward with your discussions and eventually to voting on the animal control ordinance independent of the chickens. You could still resolve the chicken stuff at the September 5th meeting or any other time in the future and just add them in to an adopted ordinance by amendment. That's if you want to take action and move forward on the other stuff. So when I asked the mayor about it, I was like, do you at least want to have the discussion with council, give them the option to move forward? Or do you just want to wait until the September 5th meeting and then let it all play out there? So that's how we got to this discussion tonight, plus we didn't have a ton of items for this agenda anyway. So we thought we would at least bring it up for discussion, explain what happened, answer any questions regarding that, and then give you guys a chance to talk through how you want to see the process play out from here on. So, with that, I'll turn it over for discussion on anything that I just shared with you. And if and when you're ready to move forward on any discussion on the animal control ordinance, we'll bring up Sean and Chief, who have been working on it after the work session that they had with you guys, I think back in April or May. So
Didn't Rob work with them too?
Rob was working on the zoning part.
Yeah. You know, he's our planning man. How can he be so indifferent with our planning commission that he wasn't more in tune with what they needed? That, I mean, it kind of makes me feel like Rob was a little unaware of what it was gonna take to get passed. And I mean, I heard you say earlier, he's trying to do it in a general looser manner, but, it looks like, you know, that isn't even close to what the planning commission wanted.
Well, to be fair though, what we're taking to the planning commission is based off whatever discussions happened with the council. And so what we presented to council was a model ordinance. And there's not a lot in the model ordinance, but it does hit several bullet points of which you can do.
Josh, somebody here, or even the chief, cause he was there and I can correct me, but I remember we discussed a lot of the things. But when it came to the chicken coops, it was referred to staff would take care of that and bring it back to the council, which it was never brought back to the council. I mean, this here's the first we knew about it, and you know, that was back on April the 10th.
Okay.
And here we're, you know, in almost past middle of August, this thing's finally getting to us. I mean, I'm just a little perplexed what took so dang long.
Well, then I misunderstood then, because I thought it was clear to go to planning commission, because again, I wasn't at that.
The only thing I'm basing it off of, and everybody here knows, I sit here and make notes during our
Right.
meetings like that, and I even looked at my notes this weekend, and that's what I had in my notes.
That's, and I don't have any notes from that meeting, so.
Yeah, I know you weren't there,
Yeah, better
Josh.
than mine, I trust your judgment on that.
But I'm still just a little concerned about Rob, you know, that why he didn't have a better understanding of what probably the planning commission would want.
I don't always have a great understanding of what council wants either. I mean, it's a tough thing sometimes to judge on where you want to fall on the spectrum, because there's things that you do choose to regulate much more heavily, there's other things that you choose to be a lot looser with too, and that's a hard thing to judge sometimes where we fall, and staff gets surprised as well, so I'm sorry that we missed that, and we didn't fall on the right side of it.
I appreciate all the things you just told us that they had problems with, but I wish you would've included that in our packet, because the only thing I had in our packet was one sentence here saying how they didn't like what we presented.
The reason I didn't is because I do not want to supersede the official protest period that's going on and present the September 5th item before it's actually in front of you.
Okay,
So I'm just discussing it and saying, here's what happened, but I'm not asking you to necessarily take a position on it, other than if you were going to withdraw the request. But if you're gonna have discussions on what to do about it and choose to move forward or send it back to them, that can't happen until that meeting, and so that's why I didn't want to put it in here as an act and accidentally have it treated as an action item and supersede this process. That's
and at the
why.
September 5th meeting, we can go ahead and say, this is how we wanna do it, and override whatever the planning board said, or we could agree to some things that, you know, maybe they want to see in there, right?
Yeah, you guys have like 4 or 5 different options at that point, which is, today is the only chance you had to deal with the withdrawal option, if that's what you wanted to do. And that's why I didn't want to over-explain.
That means going back to square one, doesn't it?
It would mean us redrafting, but that's a possible avenue anyway, it just depends on how you would settle it on September.
Well, I tell you what I feel, this has been long enough, it's been almost a year since it was first brought up, that we needed to do animal ordinance. And we've had a year to work on it, and we're still on the point that we're discussing doing part of it, maybe later come in and change. I would rather see a complete ordinance presented and adopted at one time, rather than having to come back and visit this again.
That's fine.
And if it only takes a few more weeks, I'd rather take a few more weeks
That's fine.
and get it the way we intend it to be, and not have to come back to it again.
That's certainly an option.
I'm different on that. I'd rather knock out, I think we're gonna have 2 long conversations or different conversations. I think the chicken's one group and this, you know, what we're looking at with the vicious dog and all that, it's almost 2 different conversations. I know it's all animals. I'd rather just get this one done tonight, I'm not overly.
I agree with Jeff, I'd like to see the dog thing get settled, and hopefully we can settle the chicken thing at the next council meeting.
You could, that'll be up to you guys.
By repealing the chapter 2 of the code, is that gonna do anything else to any other things besides the fowl, the chickens? I mean, anything else gonna be changed?
Chapter 2 is the.
Dogs,
controls.
cats,
Yes.
horses?
It's a complete revamp of that entire chapter, yeah.
Well, the other thing I'm a little concerned about is, I missed the last meeting. I had some other things I needed to take care of. And then when it was coming up time for this meeting, we get the agenda, or the minutes of the last meeting, and I was under the impression, based on what was in the minutes of the last meeting, that this was not gonna come up till September the 15th, or the 5th. So, some people that contacted me, I told them, don't worry about it till September the 5th. And I was really kind of surprised to see it on the agenda tonight, saying, well, we can go ahead and do this now.
I'll take the blame for that.
Well, whoever blame it is, what I'm saying is that the public was misled somewhat and when this matter is gonna be addressed. And I don't like that kind of activity. Then we threw another kink in it by saying, well, we're gonna have to move because the air conditioner's not working. We're gonna go up to the safety department to have a meeting. So even those people that did find out about it, go down there, I know you put signs on the window, but it just looks like we're putting a lot of obstructions in place for those people that wanted to comment on, to be able to comment. And if we pass it tonight, it's just that, here we are, going to do things regardless of what people say. And they didn't even know about
Let's
it.
put it off another 6 months.
No, let's put it off about a month.
My intent, after discussing it with Josh, was to get at least part of this in front of us so we could discuss it. Because I know it's gonna drag out probably for 3 more meetings. That's been what's been going on. So
Well-
let's get something decided one way or the other, was my intent. And we had no control over the air conditioner quitting, so that was not an intentional obstruction, and that's what you just insinuated.
I told you that there was no blame in place about it taking place.
It's not
just
what it
that-
sounded like,
It's just
Mike.
that those who would like to have appeared do not know when they should be here. Because of 2 events that took place, regardless of the reason. And I would like to give every opportunity for people to speak and hear what's going on before we pass any ordinances.
Did this part at least make sense why I'm explaining this part up here? That you're at a trigger point right now, you are the applicant. So I'm just explaining an option you have at this point. You don't have to take that option and move forward. If I don't share that with you, I'm taking away an opportunity for you to make a decision on something that is your right to make a decision on. That's why I brought it up, that's why I asked the mayor what would be appropriate to proceed with, given that circumstance and given what happened. And you had asked me at the last meeting, why aren't we moving faster? So that's why I asked those questions. I'm not trying to move it in any certain way, I'm just trying to move it as quick or as slow as you want it to go. You were at an opportunity here to make a decision on something. You don't have to take that. You can say table, we'll discuss it on the 5th and then handle all those issues in. That's totally fine. But otherwise, I wouldn't be giving you an option that is actually available to you at this moment.
Well, I think we need a little discussion about zoning also. I mean, we turned this into a lot bigger issue than it should be because of zoning being involved. I've never liked a lot of the zoning that we have. I think it's very burdensome in many respects, and this is probably another one. And now the ordinance brings up this very fact. I mean, this ordinance right now, as far as caring for animals, the distance it has to be from a structure, it has to be inspected, it has to be clean, it has to be sanitary, all those things are in here to protect the public. Now we're just locked into the technicality about an accessory structure that's no bigger than a doghouse. And I'm going, this is crazy.
Like there was certain square footage area required per chicken. And I wanna say it was like 10 square feet per chicken. I looked in a hurry tonight, so I didn't bring.
And that was based on that model ordinance.
So if
You need a 40
you,
square foot structure for 4 chickens?
no, per chicken.
If you said 10 feet?
I think it was 10 square feet. So if you got 4 chickens, that's a 40 square foot,
Oh, I think there's something wrong with that.
which is bigger than most sheds in
Yeah,
the
that's crazy.
backyard.
That's crazy.
And the ordinance has stuff in it as far as setback from any utility easement, from adjoining property. It was only for R1. If you lived in a duplex, you could not have chickens.
Well, and I understand
So-
most of that is for safety and sanitary conditions of the public. And I'll go along with that. I don't have any argument with doing it to make sure it's for the good of the community. But we don't have the requirements for dog house. And some dogs are big and some are little. Why don't we have a square footage requirement for dogs and the size of the dog house? I mean,
We're talking
chickens
about the
probably
ordinance,
take up
if you
2
want one
square
to
feet
have
at the most for a nest and where I mean. So something's wrong with the ordinance, is what I'm saying.
Well, there are, again, those things come from model ordinances, so there's recommendations from organizations that look at this ordinance. That's where it came from as a model ordinance, because we're not crafting something.
And you know, a while back I brought up, I've had a discussion with some of the planning commission people. And I brought up the fact that towns around us, towns that we're familiar with, Derby, El Dorado, Maysville, Mulvane, they have chickens allowed, and there isn't this big problem that is taking place with those. And the first thing that was told to me was, well, that's just because they do it, doesn't mean we have to do it that way. And they're right. I understand that. But then in other instances, things will be brought up and they'll go, well, we don't do it because these other 15 towns are doing it, so that's what they're. And I think that argument about because someone else is doing it or not doing it should not affect what we do. But the only thing I'm looking at for those other towns is, unless they've had some big problem with chicken coops in there, because of zoning requirements, I think everyone's complaining all the time about growth and things we need to do to get people in town and make it easier to be here, and people enjoy being here. We've got a very burdensome zoning code going on that I never have understood all the requirements of, and the charts and the colors and the letters and the numbers and this and that, and then pretty soon we wanna like jumble them all up and change it all again. Now we're down to a chicken coop. I had chicken, it doesn't take much for a chicken to survive in somewhere. Now I know you can make them anywhere from a cardboard box to a very elaborate structure. But as long as it's safe, as long as it's sanitary, and we've got provisions in the code now for animals for that to happen, I don't know why we wanna get locked into building or zoning codes because of all the requirements that are required. Now, you say 40 square, I don't think that'll be 40 square feet, but if that's what it is, that's what it is.
You know, my
But
opinion-
that's too burdensome.
You know, I came from a small town. I left, you know, I won't say which one it was, you know, but I left that town. And when I left, I had to clean up 3 of my neighbors' yards so I could sell my house because there was toilets in the front yard. I mean, literally a toilet in the front yard. There were animals running around, chickens running around. I'm all about.
Did they
sure
have
it's
the
locked
provisions in here that we
They had
have
nothing.
for the
They had
animals?
very little.
Well,
That's why I'm about locking this down tight if we're gonna do it, just for the fact that everybody knows I'm a big push on economic development. And all the people I've talked to about this have a lot of worries about how you bring new neighborhoods to town and this and that. So we are gonna do it, let's just do it right. Not, I mean, like I said, I'm from a small town, not very far from here. And you'd have to shoo them out of your yard because there was nothing locking it down. You couldn't call the cops because nothing said they had to be in a coop, nothing said. You know, and I grew up there my whole life. But I left that because I didn't want them running into my yard or sinking stuff up. So I'm, you know, I'm right there in the middle, like, I'm not
Have
going
you read
against
the
chickens, but I
provisions?
also I don't want, you know, I moved to a ward that doesn't have.
have you
or
read
a
the
neighborhood that
provisions
doesn't
in
have
this
that.
code that we have to be adopted, the 2110? Have you read all those provisions?
I looked at a lot of them, yes,
Okay.
but I knew we weren't talking about this tonight based on.
Okay, number
the
one
emails we all
says,
given.
it shall be unlawful for any person to keep or maintain any animal in any yard structure or area that is not clean, dry, and sanitary,
Should be
free from debris and offensive odors that annoy any neighbor, and devoid of rodents and vermin.
It
You
should be clean.
probably didn't have that rule in the small town you were in.
They did not have it.
And the second one is, Excrement shall be removed at least once a week from any animal shelter, pen, or yard area where animals are kept, and more often if necessary to prevent or control odors, fly weeding, or rodent infestation. If excrement is stored on the premises by any animal owner, it shall be stored in an adequate container with fly-tight lids. And, all such stored or accumulated waste shall be disposed of at least once each week.
You want a van? One of their worries was a van could be a chicken coop.
It says, all animals, shelters, pens, and yards shall be so located that adequate drainage is obtained. All animal shelters and board fences confining animals shall be maintained in good repair. And all animal shelters and board fences confining animals subject to residential and commercial classification shall be protected from deterioration by painting or comparable treatment. And all premises on, which animals are kept shall be subject to inspection by the animal control officer, or duly authorized public safety officer, public health official. And it goes on to say, it will be maintained in a clean, sanitary manner. Any animal kept under any condition which could endanger the public or animal health or create a health nuisance may be impounded. Animals shall be released after fees are paid and cause for impoundment has been corrected. Animal enclosure regulations. No person shall as owner, lessee, or occupant maintain any pen or other enclosure where animals are kept closer than 25 feet to the dwelling house of another, or shall permit the same to remain unclean to the annoyance of any citizen of Augusta. So, you know, we've got the rules in here to keep from what you were trying to address.
And everything Josh just
was taking
spoke.
place.
But everything Josh just spoke of, that the planning commission came back asking for clarification, did that sound like it was out of line? 'Cause to me, it didn't. It sounded like it probably needed to be addressed.
It sounded like they denied it.
They did deny, but those were the things Josh just mentioned
Yeah.
were their issues.
Who would
Should they-
enforce all that? Would that be the animal control person enforcing all that?
Except inspecting structures, she doesn't do, because that's a zoning thing. Your zoning person would have to size, measure off property. Our people don't do that.
But that, so again, I think this specific conversation right here, hopefully you can see staff's position is the initiating body. This is the feedback that we're getting to present to the planning commission to try to get their approval, and they're telling us in certain respects that it's not stringent enough. So staff is caught in that position of trying to figure out how to draft a text amendment that'll pass both of these bodies without all of those things being specifically laid out to us. So we started with that model ordinance, and the model ordinance and the way it fits in our zoning, it stops short of having in-person inspections of the coops because the square footage of the coops does not trigger a building permit. The planning commission was concerned about that. It sounds like,
Why would the chicken coop be such a problem as a structure as opposed to a large doghouse?
you tell me.
Well, I don't know, that's what I'm asking. Why
But-
is the planning commission more worried about it than a doghouse?
Are you
I think they
gonna
don't want
define it
chickens.
to?
The what?
I think they don't want chickens.
Well, you know,
So-
I kinda got that impression.
Yeah, that's what I
I
think.
think it's a personal thing.
It-
And we
it's-
kinda went over this for a while about the inclusion that we're putting in
That's
there
why
about
this
cats.
is hard,
There's some
because
people
you
who didn't
can
like
disagree.
cats, there's some people who don't like chickens.
You can
That's
disagree
what-
on the definition of a shed. Is this a shed or is it not? We regulate sheds this way. Please look at the screen. Is this a shed?
Those look like sheds.
I think it ought to be regulated to get the same as a
If
shed.
if it's not, that's fine, and we can define it that way, but that's where the recommendations of the questions
Let's
come.
call it a chicken shed then, and it could be a shed.
Well, if we call it a shed, the planning commission would still have to agree with us, right?
I would think so.
Well, if you're gonna call it a shed, we'll probably have to do something and actually define it.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have definitions of some of these things. When you look it up and research it, a lot of.
So a shed could be less than so many feet, it's not gonna house more than 4 chickens.
I'm not sure.
You're looking for a definition that the planning commission can live with. So you could classify it as a shed that's going to house chickens, and it's not gonna be any larger than so many square feet.
You could, but if it's a
And then we're
shed,
done.
sheds are regulated by the zoning as an accessory structure.
but they're already in the zone,
They're already in it.
so.
So why are they regulating it? I mean,
Cause right now, the chicken coops are classified different than the shed. That's why. The way the way they're looking at it.
Well, that's the point. Now, I understand that we're always gonna have irresponsible people in any community, in any society. And those who complain about the chickens have probably had an experience with some irresponsible people. We had this with the dogs, we had this with the cats, we have it with anything, even some other people. Some people would like to have no one else around at all. But to be reasonable and operate and function in society, as long as you have some rules and some procedures to protect you from those who are inconsiderate, I don't see why you should bark for everybody.
Staff did not deny it, planning commission did.
Well, so what do we do to get around the planning commission?
That's the process that I'm trying to spell out for you.
Okay, and I would rather have a complete ordinance with the provisions involving the chickens in it, rather than putting this together in pieces and have to come back to address this again. And there'll be some people here who don't wanna talk about it next time because, man, we've already been through that. It's just chickens, forget it.
You can do that, yes.
I know.
So Mike, is that gonna be your same opinion on pit bulls?
On pit bulls?
Yeah, that some people
Actually,
don't.
my opinion on the pit bulls was not to have them, and for various reasons. But with the information that's been presented and documentation's going on, I've mediated something.
And I'm not saying I'm against chickens, I'm just saying if we're gonna do it once, do it right.
That's
Have it
what I'm
so
saying.
clear, well, I don't think it's, obvious it's not clear to the planning commission.
Well, that's
Whatever
what
you
I'm
think
saying.
about the
So I
planning
don't wanna
commission.
do part of this tonight and have to come back and address it again. I'd rather if it takes 2 weeks, 4 weeks, another month, let's come back and do it as a complete ordinance, the way we want it and the way it's best for the community, not just a few people in the community that want it one way or the other, so that it addresses everyone in the community.
Mike,
The
back on
internet
April the
says-
10th, when we had our work session, and we hashed out everything about dogs and cats. I think when we left that meeting, and I'm gonna ask Chief his opinion, cause he ran the meeting that night because of Josh's absence. I thought we pretty much had agreed on everything with the changes that we asked for in the cats and the dog ordinances. So I don't see where we gotta go through the cats and the dogs and hold it up because we're waiting for the chickens. I think we ought to get this cat and dog controls behind us and work on doing the chickens, because it's a whole different issue. And Chief, didn't we pretty much agree on everything that night of the work session?
We did. We have 2 minor just wording things. Other than that, everything was ironed out. The whole thing's been done since then. And the chickens is what's been holding the whole thing up for this whole time. Now, the zoning thing, our gentleman with the zoning, he was actually off with surgery for a while. That also added to the whole time of why it was taking so long. It wasn't just us waiting, but those 2 options there. The rest of this, all but those 2 little wording things tonight, it's been done since April. I mean, most of us were all at that work session and went through it that night, so.
Well, I personally feel that's what we ought to do, go ahead tonight and work on this, try to pass our dog and cat ordinance. But my question to you, Josh, is, how do we, let's just say we wanna try to act on the chickens at the next meeting. What kind of guidance do we have to have, so we have something kind of put together before then? Because we don't wanna sit there at that meeting and argue back and forth on how we're gonna do this, you know, to, not only make all of us happy, but, maybe solve some of the disputes we're having with the planning commission.
So since it's a zoning process, there's a very specific avenue and options available to you. And that's what I had shared, in kind of setting up this discussion tonight. So these are the actions that are available to you, coming straight out of the zoning ordinance. You can adopt the recommendation by ordinance. In this case, the recommendation is not to pass. So there's no adopting that. You essentially have to vote in item B here to override the recommendation with a vote of at least 2/3. that passes it as they rejected it in its form. You can also, option C, return it to the planning commission for reconsideration with an explanation of the reasoning for such. Now, I've been told that maybe you have an avenue for completely changing it, but the way that I read this, it seems like you send it back to them to reconsider it as is. And to me, that seemed slower if you felt like you wanted to make some concessions and try to get some of those angles adopted, which is why I wanted to present the option to withdraw and start a new process to try to address those things. It's still not gonna be super fast as you go back through the hearing process and all of that, but if all you're doing is sending it back to them without any changes, and they've already voted unanimously against it, presumably they're still gonna vote against it the next time. It pushes it out several weeks or a month, and then you start that process that you could start now. So that's why I wanted to present the avenues.
So what kind of a recommendation can we send it back to them that we want them to do? Can they just change the what they call the structure, or, I mean, if we send it back with a recommendation?
So I might need some legal guidance on this, because again, when I was talking with Tim about it, Tim has a lot more expertise in planning and zoning than I do. It sounded like you guys have a lot of authority to send changes and everything back, but to me, that would totally supersede the process. Why do you go through hearing processes to just be able to pass a zoning ordinance change that they haven't even seen? So I look at this, I read it strictly. It says, return it to planning commission for reconsideration with an explanation of the reason for such. To me, that doesn't read as you now change this ordinance and send it back to them. I don't read it that way, but if you guys would read it that way, or city attorney is comfortable with that, or thinks that you can interpret it that way, then you make whatever changes you want, send it back to them, says, here's what we would recommend changing. But then technically, that hasn't gone through a hearing process with the public. So I read that strictly and would go through the process again. It's awful, it's not slow, it's not fast at all. But I worry that, okay, you're gonna go a month and a half down the road and end up at the same place you could start at now and send those changes back.
So I would like someone to give me information as to what it could be changed to. Does Rob do that, or do it? Because I wanna know somewhere where we're headed and what we can do. I mean, other than just blatantly tell the planning commission, we're rejected. Your
Well,
decision.
that's what he's trying to say here is, we just go ahead and put this chicken stuff to the side, just forget about it, withdraw it. Go ahead and do the vicious animal, and then we bring up the chicken stuff again later. It does us no good to know what we can do now, when it's gonna go back to the planning commission, and they're just gonna vote on the same thing that they just voted on.
Well, what I'm referring to, do we have to recommend a change in the zoning code? To change something about accessory structures, or call it something different?
That's actually what this whole process is we essentially ask for a change to the zoning code. And that change had to do with chicken coops as an accessory structure, and the secondary use allowing non-commercial farming in residential areas. So those were the changes. That's what you as the initiator of the text amendment asked. But there were things that they raised, specific bullet points that they weren't comfortable with. And so we can try to craft something to address that. I'm not sure if I can craft it under this, or if it's better to start the process over to speak.
Seems to me, it sounds like we need to start the new process. It seems like
Unless you guys just wanna take it to that meeting and you have the chance to completely vote to override it and just go to the planning commission.
But if we vote to override it, we can't make changes, right?
To me, I think that's the right interpretation, because you are considering the ordinance to have the hearings and everything else, but I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, no, so, I just have some observations, I guess. I mean, this ordinance is to amend chapter 2 of the city code. It doesn't formally actually.
This ordinance is because it doesn't deal with the chicken coops.
So to me, right, this ordinance is not subject to any of that override road or anything. It doesn't change the zoning code.
Can you speak up, please?
Yeah, so this ordinance, repealing chapter 2 and redoing chapter 2, doesn't have anything to do with zoning. And so, to me, you can pass this ordinance by majority vote of the council. Maybe you guys have understood that all along, I don't know. To me, with the chicken coops adds complexity because it has to interact properly with the zoning code. And yeah, there might be portions that are addressed in this article, but I don't know. That's just an observation, I guess. It is, there's no legal reason as to why you couldn't simply move forward with this ordinance tonight and resolve the zoning issue later.
Well, but the other one had the provisions for chickens in it. And if we were to pass that one with the problem with zoning, what situation would that create?
Well, did it formally amend the zoning code?
No,
If it didn't formally amend the zoning code, I think you probably would not, to me, it would not be subject to any of the zoning procedures. You would have a conflict in your code.
That's what we need to resolve.
You would have a conflict in your code. The most recently passed ordinance would supersede the conflicting measures in the zoning code, which would be a nightmare for, your animal control person to try to interpret and enforce. And so I don't recommend it.
So we could in the ordinance for animal control, put provision in to override zoning.
I don't recommend it, because then you have conflicting language.
Well, you asked for, when you started to speak, when I said this was taking the provision about chickens and coops out, did the other one that had it in there, you asked if that has provision to amend the zoning?
No.
So you can amend the zoning for the ordinance that passed. To get it in there.
No.
That's the reason we haven't passed that ordinance, is because it had to go through the zoning process. You were changing the zoning to match the ordinance that was drafted. That's what you were doing.
And is that what the planning
And
commission?
the zoning has not passed, so now you're passing an ordinance when you don't have a
And is that
zoning.
what the planning commission turned down?
They turned down the zoning.
We
That's
were-
all they
That
reviewed
we
was
were
the zoning.
requesting.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Okay, why did they get involved? What were they being asked?
Because, and also because they don't allow farm animals. They don't, because-
Commercial farm animals.
right, that's why they're involved.
So if someone were to say my chicken's a pet, it's okay.
If you were to define it that way, you may be able to.
Well, the ordinance defines it that way. If it's a pet,
If you were to define it, you being council, if you were to define it that way, you might have that word.
In my opinion, a judge would not define a chicken as a pet. In my opinion, a judge, if you were a judge to look at it, would define a chicken as a farm, what was up there, the
Foul.
well, non-commercial farming.
Could you speak up, please?
I think a judge would interpret chicken to be non-commercial farming under the zoning.
Commercial farm animals, but the code says.
So the ordinance that we have tonight really doesn't deal with chickens, correct?
It doesn't, because it essentially, it takes out the thing that is being complicated, because even at the next meeting, unless you're gonna vote for the supermajority vote, you're you're not resolving that, so this allows you to move forward with every aspect of the animal control ordinance that you previously met and discussed on, and it sounds like maybe you agree, but maybe not now. But then you can still bring the chickens up later, but you review it by trying to work with the planning commission to address their concerns.
Right.
Unless you're wanting to do supermajority vote, but that's what September fifth is about, is on the chicken coop stuff, on the zoning stuff, and that here. I was giving you an option to move forward with something that sounds like you agreed upon 5 to 6 months ago.
So what's coming up on the fifth?
Chickens.
So this was passed
Planning
tonight,
commi- the
we're
planning
still going to have, make a decision on the fifth?
regarding the chickens.
This does not include anything, this ordinance has
And,
nothing.
and if we decide on the fifth to override the planning commission, how do we get,
You will have an animal control.
how do we get it implemented back into the ordinance?
You will have an animal control ordinance in that same agenda packet that has that option available to adopt. What I'm discussing tonight is if you wanted to exercise the option to withdraw and start a new process with them to try to clean up the questions that they had concerns over. But the questions they had concerns over may end up making the zoning more stringent, which you were expressing concerns about, saying that it needs to be less stringent. So that's what staff has to figure out how to navigate, is a difference of opinion between the bodies over that language and how you interpret it. And they're the ones holding the public hearings with people, so they're listening to that too, so it's just, staff is trying to sort that out, but that's what makes it hard for us to draft something that everybody is going to approve of.
Well, I'm sitting here as trying to be neutral and the mediator. I don't know that Mr. Huddleston's opinion is speaking for everybody else on the council about less stringent. I really can't tell that. And unless we vote some way, how do we know what Josh needs to do?
Mr. Mayor,
Because
I'll make a
one of us is
motion that
more
we
vocal.
withdraw the application to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Is that a second? Is that a second, okay?
That's second.
Okay.
How
We have
how
a
many
motion
people were
and
at
a
that
second
planning
to
commission
withdraw
meeting?
the
In the
application.
audience,
Huh?
in the audience for the
Do you
hearing.
know what the number was? Was there
It was-
a majority?
I think
or-
there's probably 6 people that were in there, on the planning commission. I know there was a majority there was a quorum there, but there were several missing.
I've actually heard more people in favor of having chickens, fowls, farm animals, whatever you call them. And I've heard maybe 1 or 2 people that have been against it, that have had, I've had more for it than I have had people tell me they're against it.
The city
And-
planner
and
has
I've-
gotten phone calls.
I don't know if that means anything or not, you know, but
It's always hard to say, yeah.
Yeah, and there's always gonna be people on both sides. We had this with the cats too. You know, there are those that love cats, those that hate cats, and want to get rid of all of them, the ones that wanna do something humane. But I think we have to work out some type of a reasonable solution for everyone in town. And I don't think just blanket denying it is a reasonable solution. I think
That's the-
allowing with some rules and regulations that people have to operate by is reasonable.
But the main thing, we have to come up with something that the planning commission will approve, or else either we have to override, that's our choices.
Well,
I mean, that's black and white.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to withdraw this proposed ordinance.
No, not the ordinance.
Not the ordinance.
The application.
The
to planning
application.
commission regarding the text amendment change for chicken
Yeah.
coops.
Okay.
Which it sounds like would speed up getting chickens passed.
It only speeds,
Am I hearing this?
it speeds it up
As far as
unless
stuff.
you're going to be voting supermajority to override and accept it. If you want to let that vote play out, you just wait the 2 weeks and let that vote play out if you're not sure how people are gonna vote on it.
And it's still a
But if you have a sense that you would wanna speed that up, you can speed it up by withdrawing, and then we can immediately start working on some changes, because you had told us to work on getting the chicken ordinance stuff passed, or the chicken. So we can start working on some of those adjustments to resubmit to the planning commission to try to get them through. We can start working on it now,
Okay, well, be reasonable with that.
and then bring it back, and whenever it's ready, you just amend the animal control ordinance and add the chicken stuff back in with whatever provisions have been agreed to. but you'll have the same path available to you now.
Okay.
That's the option, or you could just wait, and if you vote supermajority, it's also over 2 weeks from now. You just pass what they did. That's an option too, so you could just wait and see, because, again, I'm not trying to have that hearing and have that presentation and supersede the petition hearing now. That was my concern with having this conversation, but I saw an avenue to try to speed it up if you weren't going to go to supermajority route.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to withdraw the application, which possibly would speed this all up. And I'm gonna ask for a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. 6. All those opposed, same sign. It's 2, so it's passed 6-2 to withdraw the
So
application.
for council and public, what that means though is the chicken ordinance and the changes are not dead. What we're going to do now is start working on adjustments to that language to try to address planning commission's concerns and resubmit to them. And then when, they'll have their hearings again, and once we can get through that, bring it back to the city council for action.
Mr. Mayor, has the council ever taken an official vote on allowing chickens or not? I mean, if we're not in favor of chickens, it will save a lot of staff time. If we're not even, I can speak for my ward, and that's what I represent. My ward is adamantly opposed to chickens.
Doesn't Ron, a lot of your ward, your HOAs prohibit it? So it doesn't matter if we allow it in the city?
I don't know what the other covenants in Needlers or Country Hills, but Lake Point's doesn't say anything about it.
But it's something that you can, it's something you can do if you want to as an HOA.
Yes.
I don't know, because it would be after the fact, you know.
Not necessarily, is it?
Well, you can amend your HOA.
Andrew?
Rules.
So dangerous to give things on what an HOA can or can't do without reading their covenants. Sometimes the covenants allow for amendments that require certain levels of votes to pass.
I'm gonna say that I'm against it also with the chickens, because I think it's gonna be a nightmare, one for our animal control officer. Many times you're gonna be getting calls of, you know, my neighbor's chickens over my yard, chicken loose, you know, I mean, we get calls from dogs at large, you know, we're gonna be hearing chickens at large. You can't control them all the time. You know, they can fly up, they can go over fences, they can go around fences and things, under fences is the same as dogs, cats. You know, we have a hard enough time right now controlling our dogs and cats in the city. You know, I get a neighbor's dog that comes over my dog and goes to the bathroom all the time, into my yard. You know, so it's gonna be a hard control. It's gonna be a nightmare for our animal control officer to try to be out there to try to help control this. It's gonna be a nightmare.
You know, I went to the public hearing for the planning commission, and that's one of the contributing factors, even though they were considering the ordinance, was the extra load that it would put on our animal control person trying to enforce this ordinance, which to me, there's still that line there. The planning commission should only be considering the structures and not the ordinance of running at large and confining of the chickens and that kind of stuff. They should just be concerned about the structure and the setbacks and all that stuff that has to do with zoning. It's up to us if we decide to have chickens, how much square feet each chicken has and the type of structure, what it's constructed of. I mean, there's still that fine point, and there was 3 people that spoke at the public hearing. 2 were against the chickens, but most of their reasons for speaking against it at the public hearing was they were against chickens, not really about the zoning stuff. And the lady that got up and supported chickens was her, I think her 3-sentence comment basically was, I'm in favor of chickens. Nothing about the zoning or structures or any of that kind of stuff. But one of the major contributors of contention of the planning commission was the load it was gonna put on the animal control person.
Can we have the chief address that, if he's got an opinion?
Sorry. You already have chickens in town, it's kind of one of the reasons we were looking into this. We'll do whatever you guys decide, if you wanna have them. The regulations of the structures and stuff, that would fall to your zoning people downtown, not Natalie. But we would, the calls are gonna go up. And I know you don't like regulations on how many square feet, but you take 4 chickens, that's literally 2 feet longer than a 4x8 sheet of plywood. That's not a very big coop. You know, but that is kind of the standard regulation across the state in different organizations. If you decide to do the chickens, I do like to have everything in black and white, rules and regulations for them. You know, most of your coops have covers on the top so they can't fly out. And so they're not in your neighbor's yard. You know, I think chicken tastes great, but it's not my thing either. But whatever you guys decide, we'll do it. Now, if you decide not to do chickens and you don't want them in town, you're gonna get some phone calls, because then we'll give them some time to get rid of them, but then we're gonna start sending citations out if people don't get rid of their chickens, and your guys are gonna receive the brunt of those phone calls. So it's totally up to you on those. Natalie can do whatever we want her to do, but it's just take those in consideration, what you want us to do on that. But we'll take it either direction.
Chief, I have a question. Are chickens allowed down?
No. Technically, no. They've
So
been
we
here
can-
for years and years, from what I understand.
So we can't control it now, what means we're gonna control it after we begin making an ordinance?
I would agree with you. The only thing is if they don't, it gives us black, white, hey, if you want them, the city council decided to allow you to have them, we're not gonna make you get rid of them, but you will follow these guidelines. If they don't follow them, then they have to get rid of them. That's why I say now, because it's been such a hot topic since I've been here, we've kind of gave them a leeway until you make your decision on it. But if you make the decision, no chickens, then we'll send them out, the troops out, and they'll find them. But that's, again, they're gonna.
Chief, what I have found, and I know some people also in town have had chickens. Every one of them that I've known, they didn't have very long. They had the chickens, some of them got them for the kids because they wanted to teach them something. The kids didn't want anything to do with them. They found it a lot of work, they didn't want to take care of them. They pretty quickly found a way to their friends' houses in the country. And that was the end of the chickens.
Or our stray dogs.
I've heard some, yeah, or a raccoon or something else like that, or fox. But I've been hearing some from people that we're gonna be overrun with all these chickens in town. And I equate it to the ordinance that we passed recently about the mini vehicle things. I heard complaints about that too. We're gonna have all these wrecks and people driving where they shouldn't be, and so, once you put the restrictions in place to control some of that activity, you'll have a lot less of the ones who are irresponsible, running and doing it anymore. And that's just been my experience. Even those who've had chickens that weren't detected or you left alone, they get rid of them after a while. They don't want this.
I think your HOAs are gonna, and you have several in town, well, I've been contacted by some HOAs, and I said I refer that back to their HOA, because I'm like, say, like you said, it depends what your covenant says. I know the HOA I belong to is asked and they don't want them. I said, well, that's up to you guys to have your annual meeting and pass your HOA, rules. But, I would agree, I don't know if it's that big a deal, but if you don't want them, then we'll take care of that too. But, I would like direction which way we want to go with it. And then we'll do it, because she won't be able to do that herself, we'll have to have several officers working on that.
So I just want to put this up, so this is a matter of clarity, because it is something we were talking about earlier. It's 10 square feet per chicken, that includes the outside run. So you may have a structure, that structure.
It
says
includes a coop too,
Again, it
Josh.
says a minimum of 4 square feet per chicken, so 2 by 2 within a structure, 2x2, 2x2, 2x2. So 4x4 total is a coop size, but it's allowing for outdoor space, so it wasn't 10 foot of a shed for perching.
Maybe an whole big coop.
Be more of a sedan.
10 square feet per chicken, that'd be huge. Shit. It'd be bigger than my garage.
Well, where do you guys wanna go with the rest of this?
It should be in the team.
With the rest of the ordinance,
Yeah, the ordinance is in our hands yet.
I think we need to start to act on it tonight.
We did have one change, it was, we needed a clarity on it, was we had before 3 dogs, 3 cats, or a combination thereof. The ordinance that we put out
Says 4.
it says 4, 4, and then 5, or a combination of 5. That 5 needs to be a 4, it was a typo, it needs to be 4, 4, 4, if that's what you decide. Like 4 cats, 4 dogs, or a combination of 4 total.
What's the number on that?
Right now it says a combo of 5. I don't know why we got that down, we put it down wrong, I think, that we've never discussed 5 before.
What section is that in, chief?
Also, she's pulling it up here.
Okay.
You guys have just decided to be.
2-210.
Yeah.
So that's supposed to say 4 dogs, 4 cats, or no more than a combination of 4 dogs or cats.
Chief, while you're up there, could you explain the section under 2206?
Hold on just a second, grab my 2206.
Yeah, 2206, impoundment, record notice, redemption, minimum fee. C is explaining, I didn't quite follow this. It says that if the dog or cat impounded has a current registration tag attached to its collar, where if the impounding officer knows the identity of the dog or cat's owner, the owner of this dog or cat, as shown by the records of the city clerk, shall be notified in writing as soon as possible or within 24 hours before such dog or cat is disposed of by destruction or sale. This says, if at the end of 5 days, the clerk has been unable to locate the owner of the animal, upon having been located, refuses to claim. So is the period of time 5 days? So nothing will be done for 5 days? What does that mean?
Yeah, that's what it says, 5 days.
So what's the 24 hours?
The 24-hour notice is, that's when the notice will be sent, so they'll send a notice at least 24 hours.
And then it's 5 days after that?
If,
To me, your 5 days starts as soon as it's picked up. We're giving them a chance to try to get a hold of them, that's if we know who the dog or cat
So
belongs
if the
to.
notice doesn't go out for a couple of days, then we're down to 3 days?
Yeah, but it says right there, we have to have it out in 24 hours. I can tell you this with Natalie, she makes phone calls the same day she picks them up, because that way we don't have to pay to
Okay.
hold them.
And then what is it saying in section D, if they don't have a tag or the identity, then it's just 3 business days? So it goes
Yeah.
from 5 to 3?
Yes, but what they're doing with the 5 days, because they're a citizen of Augusta, they've got a tag, we'll give them extra time. To retrieve their animal, who says they're not on vacation and somebody was supposed to be watching the animal and they got out. You know, something like that, now if we don't know who owns the animal, that's a different story.
he said that is they're required to register their vehicle, or their animal. Right, required to register their animal. If they choose not to, the risk is your pet will be put down in 3 days,
Well, now,
because
what
we
if
have no
they're-
way of contacting you.
What if they're chipped?
If they're chipped, then we have a way of.
Yeah, we can read it and find the owner, that's, to me, shipping's as good as a tag, but we don't.
But they're still required to be registered, whether. they're
In
chipped or
section
not.
C, it says if at any time before the sale or destruction or impoundment under the provisions of this article, the owner of an impounded dog or cat does appear and redeem the dog or cat, it shall be turned over to the person claiming it on payment of, it says, any impoundment fees or penalties plus the actual cost of impoundment. What's the difference between impoundment fees and costs of impoundment?
If you look at which provision it is in there also, any dog or cat impounded may not be released without certain rabies vaccinations. So you have your impoundment fee of what they're gonna charge us to hold the animal. But then we're also not gonna, if it's vaccinated, it can go right back. But if it's not vaccinated, they're gonna have to pay the fees to have it vaccinated before we release it.
So is that a cost of impoundment?
That's what it costs of impoundment.
The vaccination is?
And probably the cost of registering.
Anything to get it back out legally would be in that cost.
The only other question I have is on your, I guess it's, unless I've messed these up, 250, yeah, it's a 2-115,
2-115.
Paragraph D.
Can we get to that?
Now, this refers to something that I've asked a number of times, but here, making it mandatory. So the animal control officer shall submit a report each month to the governing body showing number of animals impounded and disposed of. It seems like we don't get those every month.
They do. It comes into the monthly report, because you're not talking about,
Yeah, but
matter of fact, you're going to see.
But the numbers were kind of strange at one time.
They rounded up, they went upward, not downward. We have fixed that. When the new monthly report comes out this time, you're gonna see a total different report, because it was
Okay.
like this big. Half the stuff in the middle wasn't even used. And I think that's what was confusing a lot of it. We wiped it all out. We're down to a report only about that big, that shows you exactly how many were picked up. But when you see animals picked up, it's not just cats and dogs. It could be animals in the street, it could be a snake, it could be anything like that, a call. So that, but you will see how many animals.
Didn't there used to be a specification about those?
It says other,
Yeah.
for other animals, yeah. You know, but then again, say we have a dead dog or a cat in the roadway, we also take it to dispose of it, but yet it's not one you're going to do.
And are we gonna work out,
Unless you want it.
for what that report says now, it's gonna match the fees that are being paid to the city clerk?
But one thing you'll see is month to month, that may not completely reconcile, because some of those we don't receive
Yeah,
the same month, but.
the veterinarian clinic doesn't always bill the same month that the numbers we're getting. Now, so the numbers that they will send is what Natalie puts down, because I asked her about that, we
Okay.
talked. She said, the problem is, when I called the vet clinic, oh, that's for last month, we haven't billed this month yet. They were billing a month behind. So I know, well, that kind of skewers all our numbers by doing that, but
Okay.
that's not our control until we can find it in the contract. Oh, two, huh?
2-201C.
It has to do with microchipping.
At the work session, you talked about giving a discount, to people, well, or actually, so if their dog or cat has been microchipped, you were gonna charge them $5, which is what they currently pay now. But if they haven't been microchipped or spayed or neutered, you were gonna charge $10. And
I
so.
would almost recommend that not be, that it say an annual registration fee as lined out in the fee schedule resolution.
Cause we can
don't
change, we
list
can
the
change it in the fee
Yes, we don't have to
schedule.
change the ordinance every time.
Okay.
I didn't think about that when we.
Cause the way I looked at it, you were looking for options to pay $5. If it's spayed or neutered, it's $5 instead of 10. If they're chipped, whether it's spayed or neutered or not, it's still $5. If they make this real easy, we can scan it, there's our owner, it's gone.
You've got a scanner, right?
We do, we actually keep it with that. Yeah. We were given one years ago, actually, I think every department of the state was, it went bad, we bought a new one, it's like that. But if we do take that out of there, then we can, just change it in the fee schedule. And you can do that as you need to.
And the reason I ask is I've heard that sometimes the chips fall out or work their way out. And it's hard.
I've never heard that, but.
I had a cat that happened, we had to get a new chip put in.
And how does an owner know unless he takes it to somewhere where they can scan it right?
If you don't, or say it comes deactivated or something, you don't, so we try to scan it.
And like my dog or cat that I just got, the main side has a chip, but I haven't registered it yet, so that could be problematic too.
On the shoulder. There's a lot of humane societies that chip every animal, and mine got chipped, that's where I got mine.
Yeah, mine's chipped, and it's the main
I
society,
did
they'll
register
find it.
mine.
Yeah. I need to register that with myself.
But other than that, those are the only little changes that we had, they were just,
Well, no, just.
thing I think we should have taken out one at a time though.
The chip.
You can register that.
Other than that, it's everything we talked about.
You can register your animal with one of the council members.
I can register, my animals are registered, but they're, I can't chip it.
I registered Jim with the council member.
Okay.
Oh.
So they get the call.
Mr. Reeves has a couple of questions.
Mayor, are you okay with the muzzling one?
Which number is that?
You okay? Just wanna make sure. There's one in here that says the mayor can make a call to have all animals in the whole town muzzled. I mean, like, I wouldn't want that on just me to lock
But you
down the
see, you
city.
see the, from what I understand, all around the state, that has to do with disease and stuff. Say if
Oh, no
something all of a
problem.
sudden hit our area, I can call the mayor, he can make the call, hey, let's muzzle everything until we get it under control.
Okay.
That's what that's for.
I think that's one comment. Sue talked to us before the meeting started, and I think she was kind of making comments, shouldn't it say something in there, that the mayor has been advised by, whether it's a state veterinarian or local veterinarians or somebody, it's not just, he decides we're gonna muzzle all of them.
Catch you on the bad.
What's it, how is it worded?
When the mayor shall deem it necessary for the protection and welfare of the inhabitants of the city, he or she shall issue an order requiring all dogs or cats kept within the city.
If you want to add it, now's the time to add it. So-
No, if he's fine with it, I'm fine. I just didn't.
Well, the thing is, say Mike decides not to run next time, he doesn't, you could have a total in there, that's not okay with it.
That's just what I was gonna get ready to say, cause I don't see Mike doing something like that, but maybe if Jeff, got in there as mayor, he might do it.
You would hope
And
the
I-
person would have good cause.
And I
but-
do think that's the thing you gotta look at is people down the road that you don't know who might be in charge.
Sure.
I don't remember how it's worded, but when we need to declare an emergency so we can shut the dike around the railroad tracks, you have to come to me and I have to sign that,
Yeah,
but.
yeah,
I think-
as a city emergency manager, yeah.
Yeah.
Rabid dogs take Augusta.
Cause I can just imagine people going nuts if you're,
Well, the thing is,
muzzling all their
I
animals.
don't know.
Now, if there's apocalypse.
I don't know if
coming
foreign
down
animal disease-
From,
Foreign animal disease for like horses and cattle,
Right.
there's state policies, I mean, you think about it, there's trailers over here in this building to be able to shut down roadways just for foreign animal disease. Is it transferable to cats and dogs? I don't know, I'm not a vet.
No, that makes sense. I just,
We saw that happening when
I
the
think you
first
should be
BSE, hit the state of Texas.
Mhm.
We started seeing it in some areas where they shut down areas because they had a positive test.
Oh, you can wipe out an entire cow for one tested positive
Yes.
for certain things. Yeah. So that, if you want to put in there, it's totally up to you guys, at the advising of a, certified, some type of official, I guess, I don't know how you word
I
that.
think it'd be easier if I could hear the mayor to explain that. I've been advised by the state or, local to muzzle animals instead of just them taking the brunt of, I decided
Police
myself.
chief and I got together and decided.
Yeah, have two of you on lockdown.
Yeah, the Department of Health and Environment, or whoever, and however you want.
State or local health officials.
There you go, by state or local, or advised by state or local health official. Kinda takes the heat off this year,
So how about pursuant to advisement by state or local health officials, the mayor may issue,
How about when advised by state and local health officials, the mayor shall be necessary?
when advised, how about we say may, when advised,
Mays and shall is a pretty powerful word. The thing is, if we're having a big problem, every area around us is obviously having a problem.
And we might actually be required to, it may not be.
Yeah,
exactly
man shall be
always.
different things.
Oh, yeah.
And I
That's in my world.
hate to bring it up because we kind of put the chickens behind us, but this whole same thing can happen with Asian flu and chickens.
Sure.
And they come through and they will destroy every chicken in an area because it's spreading like wildfire.
Yeah. Like I say, beef same way, depends on what it is they call.
So we have chicken tags?
Eggs.
okay, so
But in
when,
chicken muzzles.
when advised by state or local health officials, the mayor shall issue an order requiring all dogs or cats kept within the city to be effectively muzzled for any such length of time as be
shall or may?
I think-
May leaves a little more to your option.
Yeah, I think.
If it comes down to where the state official says, you're not gonna have much of an option anyway.
Right, that's exactly right.
I would say may.
May, okay.
This would be something if you found locally.
Something.
Anything nationally, the state's gonna do.
You know, just
Okay.
5 or 6 years ago, there was a disease went through horses. And mayors didn't have to do it because horses were out in the county. The county administrators had to shut down events.
County commissions will.
Yeah.
What's all the changes that we have made now?
Okay. So. It was just, I think that was the first one.
First thing we did was the.
First thing we take out was the fee,
Fee.
and refer it back to the fee schedule. Then we change
Let's go to the section.
the amount of 4 or 5 dogs is 4, 4, and 4, is what it should be. That's what we talked about, Nate, unless you change it again.
Okay, 2-121 is the one about when advised by state elected officials, health officials, the mayor may issue an order requiring dogs or cats to be muzzled. Then 2-201C was upon registration, the city clerk shall collect an annual registration fee as defined in the fee schedule resolution for each dog or cat.
Cause that comes up next item when you're doing.
Yeah.
Take your chicken out.
You just wouldn't want a conflict.
So Sean, I just wanna make sure council heard that one out loud, so if I understood this whole section right here, highlighted in yellow, this section goes away, you're just replacing the annual registration fee as established by a fee schedule resolution.
Yes.
Understand that.
Cause if you
Which
change
is
it, you
gonna
only
be
have to
10.
change one spot that way.
And Shawna, did you mention 2-210 that involves the number 444? Did you say the number of?
Order, I think. So-
Yeah,
Yeah.
should be in order. Yeah, should be in order.
So 2-210 is.
We just got 3 things there,
Yes,
right?
2-210 was, within the city limits of Augusta, Kansas, each household is allowed to maintain no more than 4 dogs, 4 cats, or no more than a combination of 4 dogs and cats of the age of 6 months or older.
So we just got 3 changes, correct?
I got more questions.
Okay, Ron, what's your question?
On the definitions under animals, I'm concerned about the ones that, the part that says that have been tamed, domesticated, or captivated. I've had a previous animal control officer tell me that the judge has said that she couldn't get rid of pigs in town because the owner says they are domesticated.
I think
I
there's
would
somewhere
like
else
to see
that.
that go away.
This has a no swine.
Yeah, we done that in the work
That don't
session.
apply if it's domesticated.
Well, the no swine is.
The judge would not enforce the ordinance because.
How do they define domesticated, Ron?
I don't know, that's a judge,
I mean, seriously, I don't
We gotta
understand
write
it.
an ordinance that the judge can enforce.
So here's what we're supposed to be wrong, so Mayor and Council, if you reference this real quick, in the exotic animals section, under B, says it shall be unlawful for any person to keep, maintain, or have in his or her possession, or under his or her control, within the city, any of the following animals, and then swine has been added to that.
Which
list.
means under control means you domesticate.
Whether they're domesticated or not.
I don't want, I think this is worded okay.
I think we added that in the work session.
Right, we added that on April 10th.
Yes.
Or it's saying or under their control, which doesn't matter if it's under their control, it doesn't matter if it's domesticated.
Just keep in mind, when you add something like this, and we go out and we find it, like I know there's a pot-bellied pig, you're gonna get called on, because there are times we're gonna give you 30 days to find a new.
But that's what that, it does mean.
And if I remember right, we eliminated pot-bellied pig and replaced it with swine.
Yes, for all
Which is
swine.
all.
Yes.
And we reason see domesticated, we talk about fowl. Look how many people have fowl living in their homes with parakeets and stuff like that, because they are a domesticated bird.
And I think before it said pot-bellied pigs, because that was a hot
Yes.
at for a while.
Yep.
And further into the ordinance, it talks about no farm animals, and those pigs are considered farm animals, where they didn't consider the potbelly pigs farm animals, so that's why it was called out that way separately,
Well, now,
I recall the whole time.
Why are the swine listed again under exotic animals?
2301.
Where are they
That
listed?
is where they're listed now,
You said again.
specific, so it's,
They're under 2107 too.
because before, I don't think they included potbelly pigs to be considered swine, because they considered those to be domesticated, not exotic. So we called it out under the exotic, specifically not allowing those. And now it just says swine in both places. That's not right. I mean, I just remember a big conversation about people don't consider potbelly pigs swine, even though they are.
They are, where they're like, still swine, they're just domesticated, if they want to keep them, it's up to you as council, if you want to allow them to keep the potbelly pig.
Ron, did you have another question?
I just wanna, I mean, it's been a long time since April, and I remember talking about this, but there was some confusion back then about the at-large and the leash law. If we're gonna have a leash law, or this says they're at large if they're off the premises of its owner and not under the immediate responsive control of the responsible person. But the running at large under the fine says the animals must be secured by a leash or electronic control collar unless they are in a vehicle or within the property limits of the owner of the harbor. So I just wanna make sure we're saying this, if they're gonna be under leash all the time, or
Well, the reason I think we add the collars that night is because there are some people that spend literally thousands of dollars training dogs to be within calling, but they'll still wear an electronic collar in case they forget that they're being yelled at. When you get the collar, they'll come back to you, or, you know, we walk the trail here a lot, and there's some, most people have them on leashes, but there will be some that the dog's right beside them and they don't leave their side. But they could have a radio collar on, and I think that was something that Jeff even talked about that night, was because, you know, that was a compromise, that my dog doesn't even need that. Well, you spend a lot of time with your dog. Some people don't spend as much time training dogs as they should, and if it runs off, they can hit a button and bring them back. That was kind of, yeah, we at least had that, and I think that's why that was added.
if I'm out mowing my yard and my dog is out there with me, laying in the shade, I go in to get a drink of water, is that dog now at large?
If he's on your property, you're fine.
But
It's
it's
if
not
you
under
go
my
on,
control.
it doesn't matter, this is off the property, doesn't it say that?
So the incident that took place in the cemetery here a couple of weeks ago,
That was another point I was gonna bring up.
that,
I'm not sure what that was, that may be when I was out of town.
The dog was on a leash in that example.
was it?
But to me, a vicious dog, a dog could still, if it instills fear in a person, regardless if it's a friendly dog or whatever, if it instills fear in a person, there ought to be some kind of stipulation about that dog.
I think your vicious animals took care of that, if you go back to the vicious animal side, because I was concerned about that as well. I used to have a beagle, we were walking in, a Rottweiler came off the property and attacked my dog, and Ricky looked pretty good. But it left their property, and that's where the owner got in trouble. And no matter what your animal is, at least property without you, without command, that's on you now.
Would that be molest or interferes with persons in the public right of way?
Which number are you on?
209A?
2-209A?
I mean, a friendly dog can instill fear in somebody, and obviously the vehicle is
Well, my dog is half shepherd, half lab, and there's people won't come near him because he looks intimidating, really. But in reality, he's licking enough, but still, you're right, it's an intimidation look.
Well, this was just walking, one guy was walking his dog and she was walking the other direction, and the dog lunged and she fell into the ditch and broke her arm.
That's still showing an aggressive move, whether the dog is friendly or not, to me. But then again, that'd be up to the judge after the citation is written, to whether or not he wanted to implement that into that or not.
So we gotta be muzzled at that point, don't they? According to, two-113D, vicious dogs to be muzzled should be the duty of the owner, keeper, or harbor of any dog in the city which dog is vicious or has been known to bite, chase, or run after any person or animal in the street, alleys, or public places in the city. To keep the same muzzle with a good sufficient wire or leather muzzle, secure fastening so as to wholly prevent such dog from biting any animal or person until such time determination is made by the court as to whether the dog is vicious or not. Any person owning or keeping or harboring a dog in the city limits contrary to section shall be guilty of the violation of this fine.
I would think that, there's some people that are just scared of dogs, it doesn't matter what the dog is. And I think they will think they're going to be vicious if they even just come up to sniff their hand or whatever. But that is where the person that has the animal would have to prove it to the court, this is not a vicious animal. But this covers that. It gives them the avenue to have to prove it.
I know we can't write an ordinance that's gonna cover every different right, but to me, in this particular instance, was more of a reaction. It's a reaction on the owner or the citizen other than an action by the dog. So
Like I said, there's people that just don't like dogs, they're scared of all dogs. But, like I said, we can't put every little thing in there, we'd have them on that thick. And we'd never be able to control it.
my only other comment here before we make the motion to see if there's anybody in the audience that would like to address this.
My comments have been made.
Pardon?
You fixed the thing on the muzzles, so that's fine.
Okay.
And Sue was part of our meeting in April as
Yeah.
well, when we went through all this.
And she also sat in on our work session too.
In April, yeah.
Yes. Well, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 2225, repealing and replacing chapter 2 of the code of the city of Augusta, Kansas relating to animal control and regulations with the changes of 2-121. I'm not gonna get into details, but it's where the mayor's action on muzzling takes place. And also the change of 2-201C, where the fee schedule, it will be referred to what the fee schedule says. And 2-210, the number of animals you can, possess, 444. I think that covered everything.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, we've had most of the discussion. Now, is there a roll call?
Yep. Rivas,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Holston,
Yes.
Richardson,
Nope.
Bailey,
Yes.
Leffler,
Yes.
Brown,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
motion carries.
Boy, this has been a long time coming, but I'm glad it's behind us.
Yeah, one thing, next one we go.
Yeah.
When does that come effect, that's closer first, or
It'll be on the website tomorrow, so technically tomorrow.
tomorrow, so it's published?
Yeah, so it's published.
We'll get through my way. Thank you.
Okay, item 3, fee schedule resolution of 2023-12, amending the control fees. Staff?
Yes, Mayor and Council, this item is a follow-up to the action that you just took on the ordinance that modifies the actual fees for these various items to reflect the changes that you just made. Shauna, real quick, could you explain, because there's a couple of these that we deleted entire sections, and so there was no fee for anymore because of the stock stuff. But then why did we change the animal impound fee and redemption fee to varies instead of a specific amount?
Okay, I was looking at our current code and it did not address those amounts, those numbers were not in there, so technically I couldn't see where we were supposed to be charging those particular numbers. And then also the chief said that those numbers weren't covering what we have to pay.
It didn't include the extra fees.
The extra fees, it does not, is, vaccinations on there, if we have to do vaccinations?
No, it just said impoundings.
Yeah, so we're changing it to varies so that it can be applied to match the circumstances. So if we impound a dog and it ends up needing a rabies vaccination and it needs to be registered, and then
If it's a vicious animal, they may charge us more because they have special handling of it as well.
right, so it's gonna vary by circumstance.
So rather than designating that specific fee, which we have on the books, it allows us to flex and adapt to whatever the clinic charges us for.
That's those two different fees that were in the ordinance, wasn't it?
Yeah, that, we just took them out of the ordinance, yeah, but that's where they're gonna go.
Instead of stating a specific number, it now says that the fee varies, and so we pass along.
But they're gonna be
what the cost is
separated
charged to
between
us.
the two as they are stated in the ordinance?
Yes.
And then on the dog or cat annual registration fee, if spayed, neutered, and microchipped, that should say if spayed / neutered or microchipped, they get to pay the $5. So that and should be changed to an or, and that's what we just talked about. Well, no, we were talking about, I should finish the schedule. And then on the next one underneath that,
I'll change it on my
Okay.
maybe there's a copy.
I was messing stuff up.
okay. So then the next one down, dog or cat annual registration fee, if not spayed, neutered, or microchipped, then that'll be $10. So they have to pay more if it's not microchipped.
Or spay and neuter.
Or neutered.
Does the vet collect these fees?
So, yes, they can come into the city clerk's office, or they can do it at the animal clinic.
So the vet knows of our change of fees for this?
So we'll notify them, they're not obligated to ask people to do it, or tell people they have to do it. The only obligation is for them to register with the city. So that's a cooperation we need to work with the animal clinic, so they know what the fees are and to
I
encourage
thought
them.
they issued tags,
They can.
and these fees are collected for the tags issued?
Oh, so they don't always issue tags, I guess is what I'm saying. They will issue some, but they don't automatically do that as part of their service.
I gotta be honest with you, I wish that if dog was impounded, that they had to go to City Hall, buy the tag. It just takes the clinic out of it. That way we know they're being tagged. I don't like leaving options to people that have no dog in the fight.
Well, no, there are a lot of those fees that the clerk collects can also be paid to the safety department. Can they pay those fees there?
Those are not ones that we offer for them to pay here.
No.
All right.
You mean pay here at the safety department?
To register their animals.
We don't register animals here. They're only registered at the City Hall or up there.
Only thing right around on the right.
And then what happens is
I say you do boats and stuff.
When we
Fishing
reg-
licenses.
We do.
When you do those.
For one, when they register them, they gotta have their proof of their rabies and all that. City Hall keeps a file of, all those records. We don't.
we maintain the full file, and the animal clinic, when they do register them, they send us that information, so we maintain the file. We send it to animal control, so she has an updated list, so if she finds an animal at large, she can find the tag and match it to the animal.
So when someone finds a dog ran at large, they can call you and you can tell them who it belongs to, what
They
to take.
could, yes, or they could call animal control, because we give her an updated list each month.
I think it's kept on the server up here.
I think some of the things that they do here versus what they do at City Hall is our hours are 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. When somebody's taking a boat out, it's not usually 8 through 5 Monday through Friday. It's on a Saturday or a Friday evening or something like that. So some of those are things that need to be handled generally on the weekend. So those are the things that they're allowed to register here versus just solely at City Hall.
And special vehicles.
Yes, people fish on the weekends, the City Hall's closed, they can't get a permit to do it right then. Your animal, if you get an animal on Saturday, you can register it Monday and you're okay, but you can't fish without an active license. So I would say that's probably the reason why there's a separation there.
But if you wanna take the option away from the vet clinic of selling tags and only down here, that would be awesome to me. It leaves it one place, because otherwise we have to wait until the vet clinic sends us a check and the tags that they sold. This way there's one place that it's done and we're not waiting and letting them give the option to whether they want to sell a tag or not.
Sounds like a lot better method.
To me, it's cleaner.
Yes.
I would say they probably pick up a few that we wouldn't get otherwise, but I would also say there's a lot they don't get.
Is that something that can be incorporated in this fee schedule we're talking about?
But if the ordinance and fee schedule doesn't say that they can pay it at the animal clinic, we just allow them to. So we could just quit giving the animal clinic the tags to do it.
We have to send them a letter. As of this date, you'll no longer sell tags.
But do we need to make a motion of that as the council?
It's a procedural issue. I don't know that, it's not defined in the ordinance right now that you allow it.
Okay.
It's just an operational thing that we do to make it convenient for people.
It's in the contract from 1996, I think.
Well, that.
Speaking of that,
We're at a standstill now until I can find another place, because we were turned down by Wichita.
The second time around,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, we even went to the one, I actually went up to the one up in Towanda as well. They didn't want anything to do with that amount of animals. We average probably around 10 or 12 a month.
Somebody wanna make a motion on the fee schedule?
I'll make a motion to approve fee schedule resolution number 23-12, amending animal control fees pursuant to ordinance number 2225.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Erica, this asked for a roll call vote here on my paper.
That was a typo.
So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion for a 14-minute break. We'll return back at 9:15.
14 minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second to take a break. All those